677 federal district judges are just that, judges. They're not the President of the United States. They're not the person who put his name on the ballot, ran nationwide, got 77 million votes, won the Electoral College, head of the executive branch. They're judges, district judges. Said this in committee. The real question ultimately is who gets to decide. Some district judge or the guy who put his name on the ballot. Some bureaucrat or the guy who ran for the office and got elected by we the people. I think I've been pointing this out since Judge Boasberg issued his order. When he said, turn the plane around, bring back the bad guys, bring back the illegal migrants in this terrorist organization, turn the plane around, bring them back, that makes no sense. Makes no sense, and the American people understand it. So I want to thank Mr. Issa for this good piece of legislation that we passed out of the committee, I think, 4 weeks ago. I want to thank Representative Schmidt, who added the good amendment to it that I think makes a good bill even stronger. And I would urge adoption of the legislation. With that, I yield back to our chairman.
Just to answer a couple of things raised by my friend from Ohio. First of all, that's not what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court simply said that this was not a case that should be going through the Administrative Procedure Act under the Immigration and Naturalization Act. It should be done through habeas corpus in the District of Confinement in Texas. So, in effect, the Supreme Court affirmed that there must be due process for people who were illegally taken out of this country and sent to El Salvador. Secondly, the gentleman gives us a false choice when he says, well, who gets to decide? Is it the person who puts his name on the ballot and goes out and campaigns, or is it an unelected federal district judge? Well, decide what? If we're talking about deciding the constitutionality of a law, obviously it's the judge under Marbury versus Madison. And I know the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee knows that. The fact that Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris by 2 million votes is neither here nor there. Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 7 million votes, and they still went to court pretty much on a weekly basis to try to get Joe Biden's legislation and his program struck down. They believed in judicial review then. And so we should understand that it's very convenient for them to say all of a sudden they don't believe in judicial review just because they've got the presidency. I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Ross.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ranking Member. Mr. Speaker, Article 3 of our Constitution vests judicial power of the United States in the Supreme Court and lower courts. The Constitution says that this power extends to all cases arising under the Constitution or laws passed by Congress. This is a bedrock principle of American democracy, and it is not up for debate. But now that the courts are blocking his unconstitutional and unlawful actions, Donald Trump wants to claim the power for himself and his administration. Trump does not subscribe to the principle of judicial review, and he doesn't believe in the sanctity of the Constitution. He cares only about himself and getting his own way. Now, Trump and his followers are threatening judges with impeachment and far worse. Bomb threats, harassing calls, and swatting all send the same terrifying message. We know where you and your family live, and you better get out of the president's way. President Trump's attacks on the judiciary are clear violations of his oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, threats to judges and their families simply cannot be tolerated. And members of this body have a profound responsibility to speak with one voice to condemn these reprehensible tactics. I implore my Republican colleagues to set politics aside and do the right thing. For this reason, at the appropriate time, I will offer a motion to recommit this bill back to committee. If the House rules permitted, I would have offered the motion with important amendments to this bill. My amendment would simply reaffirm the legislative branch's support for its co-equal branch and condemn attacks on all members of the judiciary. I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record the text of this amendment.
Without objection.
I hope my colleagues will join me in voting for the motion to recommit, and I yield back.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Colorado.
Woman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the No Rogue Rulings Act, a bold and necessary step to rein in activist judges who have made it their sole mission to obstruct the agenda of President Donald J. Trump. Let's be clear about what is at stake. In November 2024, the American people gave President Trump a mandate to secure our borders, shrink a bloated federal bureaucracy, and put America first. He's acted swiftly, with over 100 executive orders in just 3 months to deliver on those promises that he made to the American people. But what have we seen? Unelected judges have issued sweeping nationwide injunctions to stop him at every turn. 53 lawsuits already, halting deportations of dangerous criminal aliens, blocking cuts to wasteful spending, and tying the hands of a president doing his best to protect America. This isn't justice, it's judicial tyranny. The No Rogue Rulings Act says enough is enough. It's simple common sense fix. No single district judge should have the power to grind the entire nation to a halt with one rogue ruling. Why should a single unelected judge override the votes of 80 million Americans? This is not how our Constitution was designed. The Founding Fathers gave Congress the power to check the courts, and it's time we began using it.
Thank you to the ranking member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to this bill, which is simply an attempt by House Republicans to intimidate judges who issue rulings that they simply don't like. My colleagues concede that it is the Supreme Court which determines what the law is. Well, in today's modern age, how do you get to the Supreme Court? You go first through the district court, then through the appeals court, and then up to the Supreme Court. Now, there are many complaints that that takes too long. I agree, but we're citing rulings on the other side of the aisle of Supreme Court rulings on these very nationwide injunctions within a few weeks. And even former Speaker Newt Gingrich, the Republican star witness at our committee hearing last week on this topic, conceded that nationwide injunctions are appropriate in some cases. And that's why this bill is not about the substance. It is clear that the House Republicans have completely abdicated their own constitutional duty to be a check and balance on the president. So the only remaining check that is left in our separation of powers is the courts. But it's not enough for my colleagues to hand over all of their own authority to the president. They want to hand over the judiciary branch's authority too. A fundamental principle of our Constitution is that the courts decide what the law is, not Congress and not the president, even if he is elected, which I would note for our friends down at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is true for every single president. My colleagues complain about the high number of nationwide injunctions during the first 3 months of this presidency. Well, rather than blame the judges for that, I've got an idea. Stop breaking the law. This is a bad bill that gets us nowhere other than toward autocracy, and I yield back.